ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानं जनशलाकया चाक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नामः श्रेष्ठं मनुमापि सच्चिपुत्रम् आत्रस्वरूपं रूपं तस्याग्रजमरूपुरीं मातरिं गौष्ठावतीम् राधाकुण्डं गिरिवरं महो राधिकमधावशं प्राप्तो यस्य प्रतिक्तकृपाया श्रीगुरुं तं नतोऽस्मि। वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानं भवानेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। निखिलाश्रुतिमौले रत्नमालदिते निराजिता पदपङ्कजन्ता आजीमुक्तकुलैरुपश्यामनं परितस्त्वं हरिनां संश्रयामि। अनार्पितचरिं चिरात् करुणयावतीर्णा कलः समार्पयितुम् उन्नतोज्ज्वलरासं सुभक्तिश्रियम् हरिपुरता सुन्दरद्युतिकदम्बसन्दीपितः सदा हृदये कन्दरे स्फुरतो वासचिनन्दनः अजानुलम्बिता भुजो कनकावदातो सङ्कीर्तनैकपितरो कमलायतक्षो विश्वम्भरो द्विजावरो जुगधर्मपालो वन्दे जगत्प्रियकरो करुणावतारो लादिनी शक्तिस्वरूपाय गौरङ्गसुहृदाय च भक्तशक्तिप्रदनाय गदाधर नमस्तुते। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपीकान्त राधाकान्त नमस्तुते। राधे वृन्दावनाधीशे कारुणामृतवाहिनी कृपया निजपादब्जादस्यन्मह्यं प्रदीयताम्। भक्त्या विहीनाय अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्तश्चाकमादितरङ्गमाध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्नं वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम् वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। श्री सच्चिदानंद गौर हरि की जय। श्री हरिनाम प्रभु की जय। श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ जी की जय। गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल। So, welcome to all of you. Pranam. Good afternoon, good evening. Happy to be again back in the US, back in Alachua, back in the association of all of you. It's my pleasure, my good fortune to be able to hopefully render some service in the form of Harikatha, in the form of sharing some words that may steer the equation of our faith yet to a new level, because that's basically our foremost duty on a daily basis, I will say. Every time we open our eyes, if we have yet another day to breathe, the purpose of that breathing is to breathe for some particular direction, and that's why some of the names of Bhagavan are Praneshwar, Prananath, he for whom our prana is destined, basically. We have prana, if we have breathing, if we have life, it has a purpose, it has an object. So developing our faith on a daily basis basically has to do with that, getting closer and closer and closer. And I could be saying I'm closer for the next hour, but I will save you from that. But imagine I will be 1 hour saying that. In our relationship with God, that's basically what we are here for. Maybe we know it or not, whether we know it or not. And somehow that's one of the purposes of the book we are presenting today, I'm presenting throughout this series of talks and journeys for the next months called Radical Personalism. Radical personalism basically will be, as I mentioned in my book, another name for Gaudiya Vaishnavism, another name for Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bhakti, Bhakti Yoga. You choose the one that fits you better, but the inspiration came to address our own practice as radical personalism, to make this point clear that we are all here about being personal and being persons, personal, and personalists. No? All those three include the word person, but all of them are different, like shades of the same idea. No? What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be personal? What does it mean to be personalist or personalistic? And all of that in a radical way. And please don't get afraid of the word radical. I know it may create some nerves in some cases, but the very word radical is not something bad. If I say, oh, that Krishna is showing me radical compassion, it's not like, oh, you are in a problem here. No? Radical forgiveness, radical mercy, radical affection. No problem with that. Of course, when we say radical and maybe something else, then comes a problem. But the problem is not with the word radical, but maybe with what comes after the word radical. So radical basically means something, by definition, comes from the Latin radix, which means to the very root of something. Radix means like root, so to the core, to the root of whatever comes after the word radical. So in this case, we felt inspired to name the book as Radical Personalism, trying to shed light into how we are supposed to be personalist to the very root. That's basically the title of today's talk. No? What's radical personalism all about? So this is not a new idea. This is not something that I'm like creating myself. It's just another way of addressing our ancient tradition and the very nature of reality, which is personal. Behind every phenomenon, at least for our tradition, there is a personal conception. Everything is personalized to the core. There is one quote in this connection, with your permission, I will share with you, from Srila Bhakti-Rakshaksidhar Goswami Maharaj, that I really loved, and I included in the beginning of my book, in the first chapter, which is called Why Radical Personalism. And he basically replies to it, explaining how everything is personal to the core, as we will see. So he says like that. Whatever we may experience is conscious, and consciousness always indicates a person. In fact, consciousness and personality are the universal basis of reality. Therefore, the great sages address whatever they find within the environment as if they are all persons. They always take the personal perspective. What we perceive to be dead matter, they perceive to be conscious. With such a vision of reality, they used to address everything within this world as a person. The trees, the mountains, the sun, the moon, the ocean. Everything has a personal conception. In the background of what we can perceive with our dull senses, everything that is said to be matter, there must be a personal conception. Without the influence of a personal conception, consciousness cannot reach the stage of gross matter. From the personal conception, things evolve to gross consciousness. It is all personal. Everything is conscious first, then there is matter. Everything has its representation in the original, personal, conscious, spiritual reality. Since everything is a unit of consciousness, everything has personal existence. In the background, everything is a person. So that's a lot to unpack, but basically he's making this point. Whatever we may perceive here and now as a non-person, even as dull matter, it has mostly to do with our dull perception. Not because there is dullness around us, but it's dullness inside of us. So we need to get rid of that dullness, and everything will show its real face in connection to a personal perspective. Because even this world, material creation, sometimes, and we will be talking about this throughout these days, sometimes we see matter, the world of matter, as inert, dead, dull, non-personal. But for example, if we go to Vedanta Sutra, one of the main sutras there, my favorite one, says Lokavatu Lila Kaivalyam, and basically means this whole material creation is a lila of Bhagavan, and is the result of his intoxication in ananda or joy. So Krishna is experiencing the height of joy in lila in relation to his associates, and that overflowing of joy becomes the material world. That's not me. That's Vyasa in Vedanta Sutra. Don't look at me like, what are you saying, Mara? If you go to Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary, that's even more specific. He describes, he says, like, if a person is drunk and is like just going in life like celebrating and dancing without any purpose, but just in his exuberance of intoxication, so to say. Similarly, that's the state of Krishna, of Bhagavan, in enjoyment with his associates, and that gives this world as a byproduct. Just to start to see this world with another eyes. And of course, that's ultra personal, because whatever is happening in the lila between Krishna and his associate, that's the height of personalism, radical personalism. So if this world comes as a result of that height of personalism, everything here must bear the personal DNA, so to say, basically. That has to be in the inner code of creation. The bloodstream of creation is a personal conception. So Srila Srinivas makes this point. Ultimately, everything is a person. Everything can be conceived in personal terms. I mean, on top of that, we ourselves, in the words of Srila Prabhupada, how he will address Krishna, he will call Sri Krishna as you tell me.
The Supreme Personality of God.
Okay, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's a very, how to say? That phrase has lots of, it's like a volcano about to erupt or something. Now try to go through every one of those words. Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's another way of saying God being radically personal. Because God is a person, but you have the Supreme Personality of that person. That phase of him where he's as much as a person as he can be. All the potential for being a person. Because we are persons. I'm not saying we are not. But sometimes we may conduct ourselves in a pretty dull, like Srila Srinivas will say, a dull like matter way. Inert way. Although we have a great potential as persons to be as personal as we can. And we are worshiping, again, in our tradition, in our schools, our deities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as I mentioned in my book, if you want to relate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you have to develop the Supreme Personality of yourself. Because you are about to relate with someone who is on the level of his Supreme Personality. So if I go with that person with a quarter-baked personality, it will be difficult. So if I have 5% of my potential as person developed, I may be able to connect with 5% of all that Krishna is as a person, so to say. Remember that this is relational. It's not that, okay, Krishna is the Supreme Personality, so he's such a Supreme Person that I don't need to develop my own person. He's so merciful that he will do all the job for me. That's not to glorify Krishna, basically. Now, if we really appreciate all that Krishna is, all that Sri Radha is, all that Mahaprabhu is, we will feel like moved to become all that we can be ourselves. That's our part of the equation in a relationship. Now imagine you address any relationship and tell the other person and say, Archana, in our relationship, you will put 95% and I will invest 5%. Or Mahendran, in our relationship, you will put 108% and I will put minus 8%. And that doesn't sound too relational, doesn't sound too reciprocal. It sounds like abuse, exploitation, evasiveness, laziness. That's not very two-way street, basically. But it's interesting because we understand that in our relationships here, but sometimes when we approach the divine, for whatever reason, sometimes we expect him to do all the big chunk of the equation. And yes, he's God, we are not. Krishna has capacity we will never have. I'm not challenging that fact, but I mean, we are invited to give our 108% in the equation. And in relationship, it's 50-50, but 50-50 means both are giving their 100%, basically. And in a relationship of love, of divine love, that's divine love means I'm investing fully all that I can be. So again, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. It's not the half-baked personality of Godhead. It's the supreme. Where Prem, supreme in Spanish, we have even more directed, suprema. Suprema, supreme. In Sanskrit, su means something like very much maximized. Like when you say Durlava, Durlava manava janama satsange, if you sing Bhajahure mana, Durlava. There's also su Durlava. Or you say, okay, achar, durachar, or Krishna in the Gita say apichet, su durachara. So su means very much. So if we are speaking about the supreme, means that prem, it's su. No, very much prem. That makes you supreme. I mean, I'm not playing on words. That's a real meaning of the word. For something to be supreme, it has to include a very condensed presence of divine love. So here's the supreme personality. He's the supreme personality because of the degree of prem, of divine love that is, and that requires being a person. The more you love, the more you have to be a person. The more the two have to be a person because it's a two-part equation. So that's the supreme personality of God. God in his most personal form, in his most personalized, specific, detailed, personalistic presentation. In the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam will be, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. So Krishna is Bhagavan, Krishna is God, but Swayam. Swayam means himself. So Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam means Krishna is God when God wants to be himself. Interesting. When God wants to take a break from being God, I mean, he remains being God somewhere else in Vaikuntha, so to say, and he can be all that he can be beyond being God, which that's a very unique idea, because you may think if God is God, that's the limit, God being God. But the Krishna conception is no. Let's make a further experiment. The supreme personality of Godhead. Godhead is there, but the supreme personality, there we are going to brush there. So Swayam Bhagavan means that. Means Krishna, God, but when he wants himself. So that's why he doesn't look that much as God, because he's being not God, he's being himself. God in his most, again, personal way. God, as I like to say, God beyond God. God in the intimacy of his inner circle. That's way more personalized than Narayan in Vaikuntha, with all respect to the Sri Sampradaya, for sure. But that's a very personalized way. So that's my point. No? A different tradition, different theistic traditions are personalist, and we are totally respecting, honoring them. But Gaudiya Vaishnavism is radical personalism, because again, not only we have a personal God, but a very personalized and intimate form of the divine. So Krishna is radically personal. And that's only the beginning of the equation, as I mentioned in my book. Because radical personalism, of course, is not only about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but she who ultimately makes him the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And imagine you already have the clue of who she is. And the very word indicates. I mean, there's a hint in the title of the book, Radical Personalism. So who is next to Gopinath here? Radhika. Srimati Radhika. So another title for the book will be Srimati Radical Personalism. I didn't put that way because it may be a little bit, but I put it inside. So I clarified that idea. Sri Radha's love is radical. Her dedication to Krishna is radical. Her name is Radhika. So somehow it's all connected as well. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Sri Radha is the Supreme Personality. We can leave that because it's creating too much of a parallel event. So he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and she is the Supreme Personality of the Goddess. That's basically, he's Swayam Bhagavan, she is Swayam Bhagavati. So again, Krishna is supreme, very condensed in Prem, but she is Mahabhav Swarupini. She is the very personification of the most distilled form of Prem. So without her, we don't have him, basically. Without her, there is no him. You take Sri Radhika out of the equation, Krishna disappeared from the picture, as we know him. When she appears, he becomes who he is. As I like to put, Krishna is a byproduct of the love of his devotees. His form, his identity is carved out of the affection that he's receiving. He receives certain type of affection, he adopts that form. If we would take Sri Radha out of the altar, which we will never do, just in case, I'm not giving an indirect suggestion, and we will bring Hanuman, Jai Sri Hanuman, but what will happen? The flute will disappear, the Tribanga, the curved tree will disappear, arrows will manifest mystically, an arrow will be there, crown will happen, turban will disappear, and we will have Sri Ram there. Because again, Bhagavan shows a particular face and form according to the affection he is receiving. So in the context of radical personalism, it's her, ultimately in the background, Sri Radhika, who makes Krishna who he is. That's why another way of talking of radical personalism is Radhikal, Srimati Radical Personalism. And as we said also, her love is so radical that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, wants to taste that love, wants to taste that radicality. You say radicality? Radicalness? We always love to create new words, no problem. So her love makes him who he is, and it's so radical that Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, wants to taste Radhika's radicality. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes the Supreme Personality of Krishna. And that is Sriman Mahaprabhu. I like to call Sri Chaitanya Deva as the Supreme Personality of Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes the Supreme Personality of Krishna in the form of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is what? Krishna wanting to basically taste the radical love of Sri Radhika, the unlimited depths of the heart of Srimati Radharani. So Mahaprabhu is the supreme form of Bhagavan, where the love of Sri Radha for Sri Krishna makes Sri Krishna appear in this unique form. And that's why for us, Gaudiya Vaishnava Sri Chaitanya Deva is basically the deity of our Sampradaya. The Ishtadev of the Gaudiya. That's why it's called Gaudiya Sampradaya. Gaudiya comes from Gauda Desh, which is the place where Mahaprabhu was born. Gauda Desh. Also, sometimes the word Gauda is connected with Gur, which in, how do you say, in molasses? molasses in English, it means molasses. So it has to do with the idea of sweetness, of madhurya, and how this Gaur Lila, this Audarya Lila has all to do also with madhurya, with the tasting of certain madhurya, with the distribution of that, and that's what we call Gaur, Gaurya Sampradaya. So Mahaprabhu is the deity of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Mahaprabhu is therefore the deity of radical personalism, because radical personalism is another way of saying Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And Mahaprabhu himself is teaching by example how to be radical about everything. Again, radical means to the root, nothing like fanatic or like anarchic or anything, but to the root of things, how to go to the greatest depths of every aspect of reality. And the path that Mahaprabhu established is called Raga Bhakti, basically, mostly. That's the ultimate gift. Prema Rasa Niryasa Korite Ashwadan Raga Marga Bhakti Loke Korite Pracharam. That's the main tone of his dispensation. And Raga Bhakti, as I like to say, can be called also like the path of, again, we are speaking about being personal, being specific. So Raga Bhakti could be called the path of specificity. There's so much detail in our tradition, so much nuanced, in which our highest spiritual prospect is described in such detail. As I sometimes like to ask the devotees, okay, what's the ultimate goal of life for a devotee? What will you say? Prema. Okay, or something like that? I didn't hear the other replies.
Serve. I said serve.
Serve.
Prema seva.
Okay, Prem Seva. But of course, if Mahaprabhu's gift again is the path of specificity. So if I ask you, okay, Prem means divine love, and the next question will be, what type of Prem? Prem for Ram, Narayan, Krishna. You may say Krishna Prem. Krishna Prem. Seva is, of course, included in the notion of Prem. There's no Prem without Seva. It's not that I'm full of Prem, at least for us, and no Seva. Although I appreciate the clarification just in case. Someone say, okay, Krishna Prem, that's the goal of life, period. No period. Start a new sentence after the period. Which Krishna Prem? Mathuresh Krishna Prem, Dwarkesh Krishna Prem, Braj Krishna Prem, Braj Krishna Prem. Okay? But still you have so many departments of Prem in the Braj. You have Madhurya Prem, Vatsalya Prem, Sakhya Prem, and so on. So someone may say, okay, Madhurya Prem. Of course, it's not that you pick them like if you go to the supermarket, give me one Madhurya Prem. That's it. No, it doesn't count like that. So Madhurya Prem, okay, finished. We reached the high point. No? It sounds similar to Mahaprabhu inquiring from Ramananda Roy. No? What's the highest goal of life? That's a very similar sequence. Of course, he starts with Varna Ashram, no? Which is a very interesting point, by the way, because, of course, the goal of life is not Varna Ashram. At the end of the Gita, Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, throw Varna Ashram out of the window. Although he begins the Bhagavad Gita saying, follow Varna Ashram. So the fact that Ramananda Roy says Varna Ashram means, okay, that's not the goal, Mahaprabhu rejects it. But at the same time, it may be important to have that in place to begin with in order to attain the ultimate goal of life. And when I say to have Varna Ashram in place, I don't mean to necessarily establish the system as it was operative 3,000 years ago, but just to go to the essence of Varna Ashram, which is to be basically balanced in a psycho-emotional human level, to acquire enough dose of sattva so you have reached like the flying platform from which you can make the quantum leap into transcendence. So anyhow, that conversation between Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy is very similar. What's the goal of life? This, Mahaprabhu, age kaha, ego kaha, age kaha, or not. He said, go deep, that's superficial, go deeper, that's superficial, go deeper. And then he says, Prem. And he will say, okay, we are getting somewhere, but please go on. And eventually, yes, someone may say, okay, Madhurya Prem, but again, Gaudiyas will say, we are just like, how do you say when you are about to start the car, but you are not warming up. warming up. Which type of Madhurya Prem? You have Swakiya, Parakiya. I would say, okay, Parakiya. Okay, which type of Parakiya? You have direct relationship with Bhagavan or serving. In this case, she who has the direct relationship, which is the main emphasis in our tradition. And then you have, okay, that's sometimes called Manjari Bhav or whatever, Bhavalastra. Which type of that? Under the service under the guidance of, and so on. My point is, from the initial idea of Prem to all this hyper ultra specified conclusion, there's some way to go. And that's it. That's the, and once you reach there, even it's not that, okay, I reached there, okay, but the goal evolves eternally. It's important that we get accustomed to live our spiritual practice in an evolutionary term. By this I mean to understand the practice ever evolving, ever unfolding. It's not that I reach Golok Vrindavan and there's no evolution, no unfolding, no development. I mean, it will be boring to death after 1 week if there's no eternal newness to it. Because for what we can see from here, you read the descriptions and it seems that every single day Krishna is doing exactly the same, at every single time. So of course, imagine if you do every single day exactly the same without any internal unfolding. That sounds more like hell than the spiritual world. And of course, that's not the spiritual world. The spiritual world is evolving, as Mahaprabhu will say in the Sixth Shastakam. Pratipadam Purnamrita Ashradanam. Pratipadam, at each step, Purna Amrita, the totality of the nectar of immortality, Ashradanam, you will be relishing. At each step, at every nanosecond in your eternal life, you will be relishing ever new nuance of love for Krishna. And Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami very beautifully says, Krishna's beauty is increasing at every moment, non-stop. Try to understand that. Every second, non-stop, more for eternity. There's no day that I cannot become more beautiful than this. Sorry, I reached my limit. So you have to take the name Ananta out from him. You are no longer the unlimited. So unlimited means, implications of unlimited means no limit. How beautiful he can be, how charming, how loving. And Krishna Das Kaviraj says, not only Krishna becomes at each nanosecond more beautiful, but correspondingly to that ever-increasing beauty, the service disposition of his associates increases at every second to be able to correspond with that increased beauty, to properly serve and honor that. And because of him receiving that service disposition, that what makes him beautiful, we could say also. What makes Krishna the all attractive? Well, the all attractive love and service that he's receiving from Sri Radha to begin with, and so on and so forth. So again, I'm saying all this because to emphasize, radical personalism has to do with all these ideas, how to get to the core of what implies to be a person, us to be a person, Krishna to be a person, loving each other in an ever unfolding terms. Do not try to think too much about it because we will have to call the ambulance or something. But let's be careful of not being, not being too sure about it either. Like, I already know what's going on there. I know who is Krishna, who am I, what's my relationship with him, but it's ever evolving. So you can never fully affirm that. You have to leave space for mystery, some new crookedness in the movement of love, some unexpected turn of events. That's on a daily basis that will happen. I'm telling you, so if you are there, you are not starting to complain. Nobody told me that this will be the daily dynamics for eternity. Now I'm stuck here. What to do? So a few ideas on radical personalism and which are the implications of radical personalism. So of course, bearing that in mind, if that's the nature of reality, if that's the nature of love, if that's the nature of God, and that's our potential in nature as well, course, the question is, where do we stand in relation to all of all of this? Where, how much we are willing to become radically personal ourselves, to embrace the essence of our ideal. Because again, as much or as long as we embrace that, in the degree to which we do that, we will be able to represent the Gaudiya Sampradaya to others or to ourselves to begin with. Because the Sampradaya, Gaudiya Sampradaya, has a radically personal goal. So we need to attune ourselves to that direction. Let me share one more excerpt from the book in this connection that comes to mind, and that marked today. In this connection says, what it is, page 8. Okay, it says like this. Given that Gaudiya Vaishnavism portrays an ultra-personal deity, an extremely individualized ideal, and an intricately detailed methodology and conceptual orientation, a wide gamut of pressing questions naturally emerges. Where do the Gaudiyas stand today, both individually and collectively, in relation to the radical personalism that they are expected to represent, embody, and long for? Are they, we, walking through the world as fully invested persons, vulnerable and courageous in our exchanges with each other and with our own inner selves? Or are there shades of impersonalism that color our vision and foster our embrace of personalism's antithesis? For a Gaudiya Vaishnava, being a radical personalist entails not only the holiness of acknowledging and integrating our soul's potential in devotion, but also the wholeness of offering each facet of our humanity in the service of the soul's potential. That means our physical body and each of its functions, as well as our psychic dimensions, including our thoughts, emotions, and discernments. While conventional religiosity often leads to neglecting one or many of these facets, radical personalism attends to each of these dimensions like with any other sacred ritual. In fact, considering that every pore of our being is potentially offerable to God, and thereby truly sacred and never profane, perhaps we have an even deeper challenge. How can we be all that we can be today, not tomorrow, but today, as living emblems of devotion, and then facilitate that epiphany in others? What are the fullest implications of being a person, and even more so, what are the implications of God being a person? What is the highest prospect for these two uniquely personal beings when they relate to each other through love, the most personal of all fundamental interactions? This is radical personalism. So, a few words from the book in this connection for us to reflect, okay, I'm a person, Krishna is a person, I'm supposed to relate to him, both are persons. The relation is in the base of love. What's that about? What's the implications of that? What's the potential of loving Krishna? How much of a person he is, the supreme personality of God. How much of a person I am and I can be. And again, there's no limit to that, to the reply to that question. So it's a question that we can entertain, and we should, forever, on a daily basis. Where I am today as a person, how can I advance one more step today, one, tomorrow another one, as a person in my personal relationship with the Supreme Person? Because if we are not concerned with increasing our personhood, so to say, inadvertently we may be going in the direction of impersonalism. As I always say, impersonalism doesn't only mean let's merge into Brahman or something like that. No, there's only Brahman, Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya. Impersonalism can mean also I'm not working to be as a person as I could be. I have this potential as a person. I'm not doing all that I could do to be that person I'm destined to be in Krishna's hands. So that's a subtle form of impersonalism. It's a depersonalization of our journey. And sometimes that, of course, is reflected in the way we relate to each other sometimes, which is many times in our even Gaudiya communities and in the world at large, and even in different spiritual traditions. We treat each other not very personally, not very humanly. So all that is fostering impersonalism in one way or another. We are not seeing a person on the other side. We are not allowing the other person to be. We are not concerned with getting to know the other person. Many times we were talking these days with the devotees. We sometimes judge someone without even knowing who the person is, but we have reached a conclusive opinion about that person for eternity. That's not personal. You are not being a person, treating each other as a person. You're treating the other person as a thing, as an object, or as a nothing, or whatever. Because if the other person is a person, and he is and she is, even as disastrous as she or he may be at present, still that person has the potential to be beautiful and bright. And Krishna is seeing that potential. So how much we are seeing each other according to how Krishna is seeing each other. That's a very important point, because Krishna is seeing each of us through the eye of unconditional love. And we like to be loved in that way. We feel blessed by being loved unconditionally by Krishna, because if his love will be conditional, if he will love us only if we are perfect, game over. No? But not. The nature of love is unconditional. And he loves us unconditionally. But the price to be loved unconditionally means, and you know it, is you have to extend that to everyone else. Because why? Because everyone else is being loved unconditionally by Krishna. It's not only you. It's not only me. It's not like, Krishna, you are so sweet, so beautiful, you love me unconditionally, but all these rascals around me, they deserve this punishment. That Krishna said, hey, I'm also loving them unconditionally. So you should see them as I love them. And generally, that's a big challenge, to treat each other considering that everyone is being unconditionally loved by Bhagavan. That's like, oof. But that's the price of being personalist. No, not less than that. I don't want this to sound like an impossible project. I just want to share some exciting, challenging potential that we have in front of us. As difficult as this may sound, but it's very, very important. And we, especially as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, I would like to conclude today's presentation with a few words of one of the main aspects of radical personalism, which has to do with our humanity. Integrating radical personalism is all about integrating humanity and spirituality. We are spiritual practitioners, but also we are human beings, and those are not two different things or two opposite things, but actually two things that need to become one inside of us. As I told you today in the morning, I had the fortune of meeting with Sri Radhanath Maharaj, and he very generously gave me like almost 4 hours of his company, and we were talking a lot about this point, like how important it is to integrate humanity and spirituality and not put them two at odds with each other. Because why? Because our Gaudiya goal, our Gaudiya, the prayojan, the ultimate attainment for us is fully human and fully divine. That's what we mean by Nara Lila. Nara Lila means, sometimes Prabhupada will translate that as human-like pastimes. But also I like to quickly clarify that when we say human-like, be careful of interpreting the like as like quasi-human, or half-human or semi-human, human-like, pseudo-human, half-baked humanity. You don't find that in the Lila. In the Lila you find fully human and fully divine. So human-like, the like means fully divine. The human means fully human. Human-like. It's like saying human-divine. Fully human, fully divine. The two of them became one. in the Leela. It's not that you find like some disjointed stuff there, humanity over here, divinity over there, perfectly integrated. Sri Radha, Gopinath are fully human, fully divine. Mahaprabhu's Leela is fully human, fully divine. In that sense, they are human-like. No? But as I like to say sometimes, joking, we are also human-like, but in another way. We are like human-like. Yeah, we are sometimes getting closer to some humanity. Sometimes we are pretty inhuman, pretty impersonal, pretty whatever, no? But not so pretty. So, but the point is, the goal of our lives is to enter to a place where there is full humanity and full divinity. So humanity and spirituality are totally blended. But the point is how we will reach that place if we are not working here for that to happen. If I'm not working to developing myself as a full human person and as a fully divine person. So this Nara Lila is the highest goal. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Raya Tikka Kela Sarabhotama Nara Lila Nara Bapu Tahara Swarup Gopa Vesha Venukar Navakishor Natavar Nara Lila Hoy Anurup. So he's saying this Nara Lila, from of all of Krishna's exploits, Krishna Raya Tikka Kela, from all the Kili, from all the plays and games and Leelas of Krishna, Sarvotama, the highest one of all, Sarvotama, Nara Lila. Not when he's, again, the supreme personality of God. Another way of saying the supreme personality of God is of Godhead means fully divine. Supreme personality means fully human. No? The supreme personality of Godhead, fully human, fully divine. Krishna's two, Bhagavan, Swayam. Swayam, Bhagavan. Bhagavan means fully divine. Swayam means fully human. He is himself in the Leela. So Krishna Das Kaviraj says, Krishna Tikka Kila Sarvotama Nara Leela. Nara Bapu Tanhara Swarup. When Krishna appears in his Nara Bapu, in his human, fully human form, Tanharas, that's his Swarup. That his very identity is to be fully human. In other words, if you want to live with him, you have to, your ultimate identity will be also fully human and fully divine. And then he describes that fully human identity. Gopa Vesh, Benukar, Navakishor, Natavar. Gopa Vesh means dressed as a cowherd boy, Benukar, flute in hand, Navakishor, eternally young, Natavar, king of dancers. And then he says, Nara Lila, Hai Anurup. Oh, he concludes saying, this Nara Lila is too much. That's my contemporary translation of the verse. No, this Nara Lila is too much. So again, that's our goal. That's the invitation of Mahaprabhu. That's the invitation of Sri Krishna. Gaur Lila, Krishna Lila, all of them are fully human, fully divine. So we have to allow humanity to put in context our spirituality, as I put in the book. And we have to allow our spirituality to put in context our humanity. The two of them have to contextualize each other. And the ultimate convergence of these two, again, we call it Nara Lila. That place with full humanity, full divinity is perfectly balanced and expressed in the most charming way. If you take one of those two ingredients, that's not so charming. If you take full humanity out, you no longer have Lila. Because God is God. God doesn't play. God is not supposed to play. He's supposed to be God, to be at the office. So that's why you don't, if you take out all the Nara part, all the fully human part, and you only have fully divine, you get the Narayan in Vaikuntha, you generally do not hear the Narayan Lila. Narayan is not doing Lila because he's fully divine. So he has to be God, constantly. So if you take the fully human, in other words, if you take the fully human part, in a way, so to say, you are kicked out of Braj. Nobody will be kicked out once they arrive. No, I'm not presenting that idea just in case. Just clarifying. You never know. And if you take the fully divine part and only keep the fully human, that's fully human, but that's not transcendental. That's not so attractive. No? That's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions in his Raga Varma Chandrika also. He says, he speaks about how the Madhurya of Krishna has Aishwarya in the background. No? The reason why Krishna's Madhurya Leela, or human-like pastimes, let's say, so attractive, is because he's God. No? Because if he wouldn't be God, I mean, just to have a baby playing, I mean, it's attractive. No? We won't deny that. Here we have some grandmother invested in the Vatsalya chapter, and it's perfect and it's attractive. But it's not like Krishna being a baby equally attractive, because Krishna is especially attractive as a baby. Why? Because he's God, and despite being God, he's what he is Yashoda's child. So the fact that there is Aishwarya, that he's God, makes his Madhurya especially charming. But again, the two of them are present. One allows the other. You cannot have Madhurya without Aishwarya. And if you go only for Aishwarya, well, we don't want to lose the Madhurya side of the equation. So full Aishwarya and full Madhurya, because in Vrindavan you find full Aishwarya and full Madhurya. Full humanity, full divinity. In other words, that's another way of talking about that. And different traditions apart from ours speak about that. No? For example, in the Bible, they say, okay, we are created in the image of God. And we can take that in that connection. God is, we are humans, and we are created in his image because he is human, fully divine. Don't forget all the parts of the equation. Of course, we are not human. The Atma is not human. No? You follow my point? I mean, there are Atmas in so many other species, and they are not human. It's not the Atma by nature is human. So at present, we may say human corresponds only with the species, with physical body, psychic body. But not only that. The Atma is not human. No? And an Atma that enters Brahman is not human, it's Atma. But the highest potential of the Atma in Bhakti is human. You follow my point? We are now human in a human body by karma, so to say, but in another body, in another life, we may have been a crocodile or something. So we are Atma, but not human, crocodile. Fully Atma, fully crocodile. There's no humanity there. But if an Atma in a human form engages in bhakti, the ultimate prospect is to be eternally human. Your swarup, your eternal identity will be human and will be divine. So that's a very interesting idea to meditate about this point. So again, now, and before reaching that level, we may not be that human. We may not be not that divine. I mean, our nature is spiritual, but we may be quite unaware of that. And we are in a human body, but sometimes we may not behave very humanly. So the challenge for an Atma in a human body is to be as human as he or she can, and become, in the context of that, become as aware as he or she can of one's spiritual nature and potential, which is fully human and fully divine. As it is famously said, we are not human beings trying to be spiritual, but we are spiritual beings trying to be human. We are already spiritual by nature, but we are not necessarily human. By nature, we are not, the Atma is not human by nature, and how we behave in this human chapter, not necessarily is too human either. So we are spiritual, and the challenge is to be human. Sometimes it's more difficult that than trying to be spiritual. Try to be human first. That's very, very important. It's like again, that's the platform. Like if you want to reach India, first you have to reach the airport. No? And then you pick the flight and get to India. So get to the airport means like be human, fully human. And then pick the airport and the transcendent flight. Braj Airlines or whatever. So basically that. If we want to attain this phlegmatic Nara Leelas, and hopefully we want, The invitation is trying to become not only more human, but fully human, radically human, human to the core, spiritualizing our present existence, our present human existence. What to do with my human condition? I'm a human. What to do with my humanity? How to allow bhakti to pour over my humanity. And humanity means everything. Humanity will be also brokenness and woundedness and vulnerability, so many human facets. And all of them can be offered in bhakti. That's the user-friendliness of bhakti. No? Like you may say, I'm completely broken inside. I'm totally wounded as a human being. And the bhakta will say, great. Great. That's a perfect place to approach Bhagavan, from a place of neediness. Because if you don't feel needy, if you don't feel broken, you may be like, oh, I don't need this. But Kunti Devi's prayer is exactly the opposite. I mean, one of them, she will say what? Janma Ishvarya Srita Srivir Eda Manam Adapunam Naibarhatya Vidatumbai. And the last line is my favorite. Twama Kinchana Gocharam. So that's the name of Krishna. Akinchana Gocharam. Akinchana Gocharam. What does it mean? Prabhupada translates it very, very interestingly. He says, you who can be approached by the person who is materially exhausted. He translates akinchana like materially exhausted. Like, I'm done. I'm materially exhausted. And Krishna says, great. You reached the place to approach me. Because if you don't reach that place, you may not feel the need to approach me. Because you still feel the need to approach so many other places. But when Janma, Ishvarya, Sruta, Sri, all those stuff is not there or is there, and you realize this is nothing. Good high birth, Janma, Ishvarya, opulence, Sruta, knowledge, Sri, beauty. Maybe you don't have them and you are exhausted by not having them. Or sometimes even worse, you have all of that and you realize I'm in as much anxiety as my neighbor who doesn't have any of those. So you are materially exhausted. You are qualified, technically speaking. You have the adhikar to approach. By your brokenness, you have achieved eligibility to approach Bhagavan from a sincere place. That's the main point of the verse, Kunti Devi is saying. Only those who are materially exhausted can approach you with a sincere attitude. So akinchana gocharam. Gocharam is he who can be approached by the akinchana. Kinchana literally means he who has nothing. Materially exhausted. So again, that's part of our probably broken human condition. And we can take advantage of that, as Kunti Devi is inviting us to do. You are a broken human being. Great. Akinchana gocharam. You belong to the akinchana club. And Krishna is he who can be approached by the broken ones. The name of Krishna is Patita Pavana. He who redeems the fallen. His name is not Dharmik Pavana. The redeemer of the Dharmik, of the correct ones, of the perfect ones, of the Paka Pavana. Those who are Paka, I redeemed them. Now bring me the disaster ones, the fallen, that I feel especially drawn into that. And of course, everyone is fallen, but the point is, those who acknowledge their fallenness, special portal is there. So again, it's important to acknowledge our human condition, not try to escape our humanity and try to, to evade our human condition by too much of heaven talk, so to say. Let's try to talk as much as we can about what's going on over there, about the clouds, so I don't have to deal with my broken humanity in the here and there, the here and now. No. That's not the idea. And Gaudiya Vaishnavism is become full human in the here and now on planet Earth. No need to design any evacuation plan and live somewhere else. I mean, Krishna will come and execute his Nara Lila on Earth perpetually. So where do you want to go? He's coming here over and over again. Where are you planning to go? He's coming here, you're going there. No, I mean, it's like you are running there and you see Krishna on his parisats going the other direction. Like, but I thought I was supposed to leave this place as soon as possible. This horrible samsara. No, Krishna said, there's another way of seeing this. Come with us, join us. So we need to integrate our humanity. Again, our path is Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya means everything can be properly integrated. There is a way to... What we need to reject is the wrong conception of things. Today, Radhanathan was telling me that. He was telling me one story where one devotee of Prabhupada told him, Prabhupada, for you, I will renounce everything. Maybe you know the story. And of course, it's a nice thing to tell your guru. I'm willing to renounce everything for you. But Prabhupada felt the spirit behind the words. There was something like not so accurate there about the renouncing everything. And Prabhupada replied, actually, you don't need to renounce everything. Actually, you need to renounce the idea that you need to renounce everything. That's the only thing you need to renounce to. Because everything is a Shakti of Krishna, and everything can be offered in service to him. So you don't need to renounce anything. You only need to renounce the idea that you need to renounce everything. That's the only thing you need to renounce. So that's Yukta Vairagya. Everything is potential paraphernalia to be engaged in the service of Bhagavan. Including our humanity. Because if our humanity is not in place, no matter how refined is not your intellectually, that's why I'm going here to my head, no matter how refined our conception of God is intellectually, if our humanity is not in place, we will have a hard time relating to Krishna in any realistic sense. Because again, he's a person and he's a human, fully human person and fully divine. So be careful of getting too much into our heads about thinking God, so to say, and forgetting to be human. There's one quote that says, even a good theology will have a hard time making up for a bad anthropology. So if you are not very expert, anthropology has to do with your humanity, who you are as human. So if you are not good in anthropologizing yourself, if dealing with your humanity, a good theology is not enough. It can even be a tricky device to escape your humanity. Let's talk a lot about God in the sky, so to say. So we don't have to deal with what's going on here. But God is here with us. Krishna is not somewhere else very far away. He's closer than anything and anyone else. So let's deal with everything that is close to us, basically. That's the idea. So at the end, it's all about humanity again. From here, dealing with our humanity, all the way up to our eternal goal. The closer we get to our eternal goal, the more humanity we will find, basically. Till we reach the realm of Lila, full humanity. But that reach starts here. That's the point. If we don't start here, it will never happen there. Whatever is here and there. It's not just, a geographical 3D. You take a spaceship and 3 million kilometers, I'm in Golok Vrindavan. It's a movement in terms of consciousness. So again, this is a crucial aspect of radical personalism that I felt to share today in the first lecture. We are today officially inaugurating this book tour I will be doing for the next, 4 or 5 months. So pray for my health, please. And it's a point that I want to emphasize, and somehow we will try to emphasize in the next lectures. Not only humanity is not bad, but nothing is bad ultimately. The material world is not bad. Our body and emotions are not bad. Nothing is ontologically profane, so to say. And therefore, our humanness is not bad either. On the opposite, everything is potential paraphernalia to offer to Bhagavan. So I share a few words today. Now we'll go a few minutes for Q&A, if there's a few minutes left. Yes, please. So today I chose to talk about the title of today's talk, what's radical personalism all about? And of course, all about, there's so many more things we can say. But I wanted to introduce at least the concept and focus on, inaugurate this series of lectures focusing on this particular point, which basically is that in our bhakti journey, our humanity is not negotiable, basically, but all important. now and Sumati will say for the rest of forever. No. So anyhow, some thoughts in connection to what's radical personalism all about. A few questions before finishing. Pranada has one question or comment, whatever.
What's your definition of humanity? Are you referring to, or humanness? Are you referring to the emotional experience of being human and relationships? Is that what you mean by humanity?
If it's that what I mean by humanity.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, there are many ways we can emphasize that, but I will say mostly that what you have chosen to focus on, because yeah, that's what mostly characterizes us as humans, I will say. No.
Relationships and emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And psychological aspect of being
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah, exactly. And again, all that is tied to those things that are only found in the human species, which also is, to be a human means that the consciousness has reached such a level of unfolding or has such a level of capacity of expressing itself that it can think about itself. I mean, in other species, as we know, animal species, plant life, mineral life, they are not aware that they exist. Basically, they don't have self-consciousness. So, of course, Vedanta Sutra makes that point, atato brahma jignasa, which one of the meanings is, atato means now that you have reached humanity, brahma jignasa, no? You have the capacity of inquiring about the absolute, and when it's about Brahman, and you can also use the word Brahman for yourself in one level. So you can inquire about yourself, and for inquiring about yourself, first you have to know that there's something called yourself. A cat is not thinking in those terms. No, myself, they're just driven by instincts, animal instincts, and we have the animal side for sure. So we need the human part on the equation, which, apart from what you mentioned, emotionality, psychology, relationships, because other animals also have relationships. They have their psychology, they have their emotions on some level again, but they don't have the capacity to become aware that they exist, and all that comes from that moment on, to reflect who am I, and who am I means what's all that I can become, to think in terms of potential and so on and so forth. So I would like to also tie that to the human definition, because that's unique to humanity. So, of course, your points are also completely valid.
So in the Radical Personalism book, you deal with the practitioner developing that humanity in a proper way in relation to others and God, and by relating with others, we learn how to relate with God.
You're asking me about that?
Yeah, that's in your book.
But you read the book, you wrote the foreword.
I'm asking.
Forward by Pranada Kamta. It's okay, I'm joking. We were rehearsing before the lecture. We give this question like this. No, I'm joking even with that one. But yeah, of course, the idea in the book is trying to provide some, hopefully some windows, some tips, some ideas, some reflections on what we can do with our humanity, how to connect with that, and for example, chapters like the one on vulnerability and empowerment, that has a lot to do with, again, learning to be vulnerable as humans and not seeing that as something undesirable, but actually, if properly expressed, vulnerability is a source of empowerment. If I learn how to be vulnerable, how to be courageous, how to be exposed emotionally in a proper environment, because if not, that will be abuse, but in a proper environment, that will give us a fruit empowerment. Next, the other chapter also, individuation, has a lot to do with that, how to develop our personality as individuals in service to Krishna. That's very, very important. I always remember this section of the Bhagavatam that Rupa Goswami quotes, makes a verse of his own based on that verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which basically says, Krishna is saying, offer to me what I like the most and offer to me what you like the most. Hmm? And of course, these are levels of surrender. No? In one level, it's like, whatever you want, I will do it. Whatever you want, I will do. And Krishna will say, okay, here's what I want. I want to know what you want. And what if you say, no, I don't want anything separate from you. Okay, but I want to see what you want. No? What's your initiative of service, basically? Don't wait for me to tell you, now you do this, now I want that. That's not, on some level, okay, that's whatever you want. But at some other level, Vrindavan platform, I mean, it's not that Krishna will be hinting at the manjaris, I think at this moment you should be chastising me. No? He will say to Sri Radha, I will feel very much joy if you exhibit this particular jealousy. I mean, that's not happening. They are totally expressing that out of their own initiative. They are so attuned, in sync with the dynamic, that they have their own will expressing a spontaneous, and that gives Krishna the highest pleasure. So he doesn't need to tell them, it's time for doing this, it's time for offering me this service, but just full initiative. So gradually, not rushing, but the idea is one has to develop one's own personality for that to happen. One's own desires of service, of offering, of pleasing Krishna in a certain way. One has to offer one's individuality for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's also touched upon in the chapter of individuation and others, but those two come to mind as main ones. Yeah. Mahandrani.
So when you were
You need some water? Yeah, you need. You give her water. Okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's water.
My voice just does this sometimes, and I think it's very
Okay.
because it seems to do it more in company than it chokes up. But so when you were talking about our need to develop, we have to develop our humanity. We have to, every day we should be considering how to become more personal. And maybe because I think of myself as having a strong impersonal streak or recovering impersonalist.
Welcome to the club.
My mind immediately threw up, okay, so I have to work on becoming more personal or developing my humanity. I need a checklist. This is the qualities of what being human is. These are the symptoms of what being personal is. I have this one. I need to work on this one. But then you said one of them would be you try to develop loving everyone regardless of what they're like, with unconditional love, the way Krishna loves us. But is there like I don't know exactly how to start developing or improving my personalism and my humanness.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe but as you talk to some of the things we're, I guess, working on the vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
working on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels it's somehow in my mind, but it's not concrete enough for me to know the next step do I do.
Yeah. And of course, the challenge, I mean, concrete enough, one has to find that for oneself in one sense, because it won't be the same thing for every one of us. Now, what do we need in our particular stage and situation is totally maybe different from what the other need. And that means to be personal. If I just tell you, all of you need to do this in this precise moment for advancing in terms of developing your humanity, that's impersonal, because I'm treating you as a blank slot. You say, how is that? Slate. Like all of you are in the same situation, like an abstraction, like the same magical formula. You say, no, Maharaj, but I'm a person and she's a person, and all of us are in very unique, different situations and may need different degrees and forms and nuances. And of course, it's complex to think about that, to pay attention. What do I need in this particular stage? And not just wait for someone to give me the magical formula. I swallow one pill and that's solved forever. That's impersonalism. To be personal means to take some time and try to be introspective and say, okay, where I am now. And one way to start to detect, so to say, what's my homework on my humanity. Well, one way of saying that is, okay, which type of situations trigger me, and what they trigger in me, and why that pattern, why in those particular situations I'm being triggered in whatever. Again, there are so many triggers, there's not only one for sure. I'm starting to, okay, why this guy or certain person. Sometimes we have some people in our lives, I think all of us probably, that we have a hard time dealing with. and it's a human attribute to think, first of all, to not take it personal, because at the end of the journey, all of us are atmas being unconditionally loved by Krishna. At the end of the day, it's not him against me and me about him against him. It's not the ego Kurukshetra battle, Kuru Pandava dichotomy. So start to see the situation from a bigger picture. Again, that person is attacking me, but it's actually attacking me, as we were talking yesterday. Is that person angry at me? It seems so, but what he put in the Facebook thread the other day, but now Facebook lends itself a lot to that. But that's a great exercise. No, it's not about personal anger. That person is sad, has pain, and a particular situation that I was instrumentally and triggered, that unresolved pain that comes in the form of anger, and that person thinks maybe it's angry at me, but actually is suffering a lot, and probably behind the suffering is lots of fear of some unresolved human issues. And of course, if I reply to that unresolved human issues with my own unresolved human issues, well, you will have a long thread in Facebook that day till you will block each other probably at the end of the day. But the idea is not that, of course. The idea is to put a stop and see the bigger picture and see and invoke further humanity. How can I be more human? If the other person is not able to invoke that humanity, well, it's my turn. I'm being invited by that person's angry, I'm suffering, and fear, to invoke further humanity, so I can deal with this situation without wanting to kill that person. And actually ending being compassionate and understanding the person, and maybe doing intercessory prayer for that person's welfare, whatever. So again, I mean, just a concrete situation that we may like. I can enhance my humanity through challenging situations, and so.
So I guess that instead of looking for a list, I should just each day ask Krishna, okay, what can I learn today, and see what he shows up, what he arranges.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not against the list either, but I think what you mentioned at the end, sounds realistic, because sometimes a list may be also like too much in the box, like tick, 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 tick. And the daily situations sometimes are out of the box. Yeah. They create their own boxes, and we need to deal with them, because if not, we stick to our list, but so many other things go in between our list. So what are we doing with that? So it's
I realized over time, as I hear you talk about eternally becoming, it showed me I have this idea, or had this idea in life. You learn, and then you've got it. So that's, I think, is part where it's coming from, with one in the list. So I can list, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's ongoing.
Yeah, and that's easier said than done. That's so challenging to really inhabit that ongoing land where nothing is fixed. Nothing is like finished product. It's so difficult because we have the tendency to control everything. And to control means I understand it. It's fixed. List complete. Did my homework, understood. It doesn't work like that with an eternal unfolding mystery that God is. How much you can that's Brahma. Brahma Vimohan Lila is basically that lesson. Brahma thought he knew who Krishna was until the picnic was inaugurated. And Brahma said, that's not Krishna, because I know who Krishna is, and that's an imposter. And you know how the experiment resulted for him, no? And at the end, of course, he starts to pray the famous Brahma Stuti, and basically his last prayer, almost, he says, for those who say, I know who Krishna is, I offer to them I pranam from miles away. No, like okay, he say basically, for those who say I know who Krishna is, let them say so. But as far as I'm concerned, I already said that a few minutes ago, and here's the result of that. I know who Krishna is. Krishna, oh yeah, you know who Krishna is? Let's see. I don't have an idea who Krishna is. I know something, but the something I know is nothing in comparison to all the more that I can know. Because again, eternal becoming. Krishna is always becoming more of what he is. Krishna is not a finished product that I can take and consume according to my sweet will. He's always evolving. He's always becoming more of what he is. So how much I can colonize God by I understand him? Not possible. So yeah, that's a great challenge to the ego, because that humbles the ego constantly. If you say, I know who Krishna is, no, you don't know. Even if you got to understand him till now, the next nanosecond he's something else. So you cannot just know that new thing. You have to enter into that and to enter into that. In fact, the Bhagavatam says, and that's even more interesting, the personified Vedas, chapter 87, 10th canto, tell Krishna, you don't know your own limits. I mean, you don't know yourself, they tell. I mean, they are praising him, not insulting him. They are telling him, you don't know your own limits. Why? Because you don't have limits. So you don't have limits. So how can you know something that does not exist? Your limits do not exist, so you don't know them. There is something you don't know because you are constantly expanding unlimitedly. So you can always, you're always grasping further depths of yourself. Mahaprabhu is the very personification of that. And Mahaprabhu's Leela is eternal because he's eternally delving deeper and deeper and excavating what's here and what's here. And there's always new jewels coming. So, and we want to go there. So again, if we want to go there, we have to speak that language. Because if we want to go there thinking, I already know who Krishna is, I already know what's going on here in the Leela, I mean, that's not happening. And every moment, everything will be new. That's anurag, the symptom of anurag, which is one stage of prem, development of prem. Anurag means every devotee will feel subjectively, this is the first time I'm seeing Krishna. That's what Radha is feeling. That this is the first time I'm seeing him. And there are so many beautiful prayers where she's asking Lalita, who is that sapphire blue boy that I have just seen? And she's like, but you were with him 5 minutes ago. No. I'm just getting to discover him. And Krishna the same, this type of prayer, like, who is that beautiful? No, he's telling to Subal, like, that golden skinned lady. I'm totally captured. And Subal is like, I mean, you just are separated for the last 30 seconds. But that's the nature of love. Again, it's always on the move, so to say. So you have to, as I put in my book, you have to keep the pace of transcendence.
And somehow amid all that, they have a deep sense of security.
Yeah, of course. It's not neurosis. It's not like everything is changing and moving. It's too much. I need. No. At the same time, they are completely grounded in faith and love and surrender, saranagati. It's totally in place. And that's what allows all these other constant movements to take place without being a torture. Like, oh, Krishna is playing the flute there. Now he's playing the flute there. Now he's playing the flute. Oh my God, I quit. I changed job. This is too much. No, nobody thinking that. No, so because they are so grounded in that. So we need to be grounded again here as sadhakas in Shraddha, Saranagati, all these elements, while understanding the constant, ongoing, evolving nature and moving of divine love. So, anyhow, something else before finishing?
I've kind of been approaching this subject from the Sandarbha side. So it's come to my attention that my understanding that we're just gonna get perfected and wake up in the spiritual world and everything's going to be great. That's not right. And that there's a primacy to the human experience, to the Nara Lila, that Mahaprabhu is here, Krishna's childhood pastimes are here, the demons are here, there's so much variety going on here. As you said, Krishna's constantly coming here to experience this. So I realize that I need to embrace my humanness.
Right.
And I think what you're saying is basically that there's no getting away from it. Not that we hate our human existence and we just think we're going to wake up one day and be somebody different. You know what I mean? We have to work with what we have.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not that, as you mentioned, I totally agree with what you mentioned. I mean, it's not that I'm here being some person doing some things as a devotee, and suddenly I awaken in the Lila being a completely different person from the person I was there, and I'm the Lila. No, we will attain that place by attaining that place here.
Right.
I mean, getting so close that we are there. You follow my point? It's not that there's a complete like dichotomy. Here it's me as human on earth, and here's me in the Lila, complete different personality, psychology. No. Of course, if my present humanness is not fit for entering the Lila, then I have to work on that. But here and now, not expect magically that will be like transformed in the Lila miracle. Because sometimes, not wanting to criticize anyone, but sometimes some devotees have a little bit of naivete in this sense, like, oh, I will just chant my rounds and follow the 4 regs, and magically I will be awake one day in the Lila. And I know there's no bad intention there, but it's a little naive, because if I'm doing all that, if I'm doing that nicely, okay, that's another thing. Purely chanting Shuddhanam, probably you will get there eventually. But it's not getting awake in the Lila. Start to getting awakened here. I have to awaken every single day a little bit more and a little bit more and a little more. And at one point, I found myself in the Lila here, in one sense. Because again, being in the Lila is participation in terms of consciousness. I mean, we hear of the descriptions of these great saintly personalities who are here on earth, but internally they are participating in the Lila. So they are showing to us that's how you attain that place. It's not that I leave the body, again comes the mothership and takes me, and I awaken like, wow, what's this and who I am? I'm the totally different person. I mean, that will be paranoia probably. Imagine if you wake up one day and you're a totally different person and you remember who you, whatever, no? So it's as you say, no? We have to achieve that Lila here and now. There's no escape.
Right.
There's nowhere to go in one sense. I mean, everything is given now. I mean, Bhakti is given now. Bhakti is sadhana, Bhakti is sadhya. Bhakti is the means, Bhakti is the goal. So if I take proper advantage of Bhakti here as sadhana, Bhakti eventually will show itself as sadhya. That's it. We are not concerned about even leaving this planet Earth, leaving this body. I mean, we have these extreme even statements by some of our acharyas. Of course, it's a way of, they put that, no? Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying, if I need to be born as a worm or as an ant for serving you, I don't, it's okay. No, or like Brahma or like Uddhava praying like to be born as a blade of grass, as anything. So the point of those prayers is like, I don't care for mukti, for example. I don't care for leaving this world, for leaving, for rejecting anything. I'm all about service. Whatever is favorable for that, just go there. So that's a big lesson for us, because they are praying like, I don't care returning here being even an insect, and we are maybe, I want to leave this world as soon as possible. And it's like, but our goal is not moksha. Because moksha technically is that. No? Liberation from. No? But our goal is not moksha, it's prem. And one of the qualities of prem is moksha lagutta krit. That happens in bhava bhakti. What to speak of prem? Moksha lagutta krit means the goal of liberation becomes, can we turn on the light for the camera? The goal of liberation is seen as insignificant, lagut. Or as the Bhagavatam says very nicely, Narayana parasarvena kutasthana vibhyati swarga apavarga narakisu apitulyartha darshinaha. This Mahadev Shiva, when Chitraketu Maharaj, remember, he's cursed by Parvati, when Chitraketu Maharaj is having this capacity to fly, and he found Shiva instructing sages, but with Parvati sitting on his lap, and he kind of jokes with Shiva in a friendly way. But Parvati didn't like the joke, so he cursed Chitraketu Maharaj to be born as a demon, Vritrasura eventually. And Chitraketu Maharaj totally accepts the curse, and he doesn't care to be born as a demon. And that's when Mahadev pronounced this verse, which says, Narayana parasarvena kutasthana vibhyati. For those who are devotees of Bhagavan, they have no fear. And they have no fear, and they have no desire apart from being a devotee of anything. Swarga, apavarga, narak. They don't care for the Swarga, heavenly planets. They don't care for Narak, for hellish planets. They don't care for Apavarga, mukti, liberation. They don't care. They only care for you. So that's it. Like once Srila Prabhupada said, like a devotee, how a devotee should be prepared to leave his body. And he says, one should be so absorbed in service to Krishna that one doesn't realize that he left his body. To that point, you no longer care. Of course, you cannot imitate that and press a button, but the more you get absorbed, which is the goal of sadhana, is abhesh, is absorption. The less you care for living body, taking birth here, there. I mean, if you are honest and sincere in bhakti, you're already there. It's just a matter of time refining the products, so to say. But you're already there. You're on the path of bhakti. And the goal of bhakti is bhakti. So it's bhakti. We are already there. You have to be careful, of course, not committing aparad and so on. But if you are honest and sincere, what Krishna says in the Gita, neha vikrama nasasti pratyabhyayana vidyate swalpapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato vayat. In this path, there is no loss, no diminution, and whatever you have gained will protect you from the greatest danger. I mean, you want any more higher warranty than that Krishna is making. You will not lose anything, nothing will be diminished, and whatever you have attained will protect you from the greatest possible danger you can imagine. Just like to say us, continue, no problem. You're already there. So yeah, no need to reject the world, reject our humanity, reject where we are. On the contrary, venerate everything, honor everything. Because if not, we are just telling Krishna like, no, I don't like this, still this is not enough, I'm not satisfied, instead of being grateful and perceive, everything has already been given to me now. I don't need anything. Everything that I need is already being given to me in this precise moment. As I mentioned in my book, everything is being given to us in the present, but how present we are in the present. Sometimes we are not too present, and that's why we lose sight of all that is in the present, and we are like, I need this is lacking, and mind going shopping to the past, to the future. But if you are really present in the present moment, you will see a very big present being given to you in the present. Everything what you need. And we need to honor that properly. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll conclude here. So we share a little bit more informally after the lecture. Thank you so much for your time. Shri Man Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Radha Gopinath ji ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Bol. Mancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Thank you so much, and all of you connected online as well. And you are, of course, invited these days. We will be having a few other programs for those who have time. Tomorrow is Saturday, on Sunday as well, on Monday, and next Saturday. So you can ask any details. And tomorrow also we'll be starting in the morning one podcast, weekly podcast in connection to the book called The Free Radical Podcast. So you are also invited to tune in, as they say, 10 a.m. We will be streaming live through different platforms. So we will be continue reflecting with other Vaishnavas and friends, brothers, sisters, on the contents of, or the implications in radical personalism. Okay, thank you so much. Go to Hari Hari Bol.